a voice.
Very good evening to you all from my school news TV, and I am Ijo Maclay. We are still on the program Career Compass. If you were with us the last time, you're gonna just a little recap of our last program. We talked about career paths in mass communication, and I explained clearly that the essence of career paths and opportunities is to serve as a compass, to serve as a guide to undergraduates, to freshers, and to as many people out there who are seeking for what career path they should go, and for as many who are already offering these courses to see that beyond the stereotyped impression people have concerning your career, there's so much more your career can offer. And yes, based on popular demand, okay, the last time I said the course with the highest votes gets it, and while we're on air I got 3 for psychology, and psychology beats the vote. So we're going to be talking about career path in psychology today. So yes, if you're with us, please hit the like button, share and comment. Just tell us where you are viewing from, where you are live streaming from. Let us know if you're a student, your school, your course of study, and all of that. It means a lot to us. Welcome once again. So yes, over to the business of today. So psychology, I would not explain psychology in its basic term, but I know clearly that one flair of psychology is it has to do with human behavior and the mind, right? And so if you're fascinated about the workings of the human mind and all of that, psychology would or might be the best option for you. One beautiful thing I realized about psychology is the fact that you could it's a very flexible course, right? Before we go into this career path, I want to let you know that psychology is very flexible. It means you could start, you could work and apply for jobs, like I said, in different companies of your choice. Just the same way it applies for mass communication, psychology is needed in every area of human endeavors. And so psychology is a very flexible course. It's not all that rigid as to where they can get a career path in, or as to where they could be able to function in. All right, for some universities, they consider psychology to be in the social sciences. Most universities, yeah, but psychology has a blend of art and science, and so that's why you realize that in most cases, without biology in your maybe WAEC or WASE as it's supposed to be called, but WAEC as it's popularly called, you're going to realize that without biology, you won't go further in the course. All right, so over to the opportunities you would find in psychology. Well, popular study has it that for you to go really far in practicing psychology, it's advisable you get a master's. Though there are opportunities that come for those in those with just the BSc, the bachelor's, right? But then for you to go advanced in practice, there's need for you to go further for your master's or your PhD degree, as many top opportunities in psychology will require that. So first of all, we're going to be starting with the clinical psychologist. I'm sure this is what almost everybody know, right? About a psychologist. They feel every psychologist out there are clinical psychologists. So who is a clinical psychologist? These are the people who access, dialogue, and diagnose um clients. All right. So the main job of a clinical psychologist is that they listen to your problems, they profess solution. They could even say, okay, this is the mental health disorder you're having, and all of that. And something very beautiful about the clinical psychologist is also that they can work in different parastatals, especially in the medical sector. So in medical sector, we're going to see them in the hospitals, we see them in mental health clinics, and as many as possible. So these are the people who basically sit down with patients and then they diagnose the disorder, they conduct psychotherapy, they refer you to maybe a higher body, and sometimes they refer you to they could, okay, if your case becomes like out of hand, they're the ones who will now refer, okay, I think you should go see this, I think you should handle this. So basically they are like consultants, so people meet them, and trust me, the pay for a clinical psychologist is quite ransom. It's a very good pay. So yeah, and they could also publish their findings in journals. Yes, they could publish their findings in journals. And so after maybe a long process of practice, a clinical psychologist could publish all their findings in journals, because science has to do with experiments, has to do with a lot of processes, the guess, the hypothesis, the observations, and all of that. And having passed through all these processes, they could publish a work on it, right? Something very interesting about the clinical psychologist is that you cannot function under the clinical psychologist without getting your PhD. Yes, your PhD. It's very important. Until you get to the doctorate degree of psychology, you would not be able to perform as a clinical psychologist, because it's one of the highest cadre in psychology. Another very wonderful career opportunity in psychology, the counseling psychologists go a long way to help with varieties of problems, including family, emotional, substance, etc. And you will see them mostly in schools. That's why we have things like guidance and counseling. And oh yes, we actually have a course on its own which deals with it's called G&C, guidance and counseling, and all of that. But on the same hand, or on another hand, in the same vein rather, these counseling psychologists could also play the role of a counselor. They've gone way beyond human understanding, right, to study deeply into the minds of humans. And so they serve as counselors. You can see them in the university. Sometimes you see them acting as even therapists, right? Yes, they come in place of therapists. They get paid per hour, just depending on the contract which they sign up for. Okay, so that's the work of a counseling psychologist. Another very beautiful area of psychology is the educational psychologist. Yeah, just as the name implies, educational psychologists work in and around education. They do a lot of underground studies about human behavior in the educational arena. All right, and so when they do this, they come out with a lot of findings that would help improve the academic, that will help improve the educational system, and as well as the people in the system, right? And so very importantly is the forensic psychology. Yes, the forensic psychology sometimes work hand in hand with the military psychology, right? There's another career path of military psychology, but let me say a little of fighting crimes under forensic psychology, and then we'll do more of it under the military psychology, right? And so the forensic psychologists, they go deep to fight crimes. Their work is to really interrogate criminals, ask questions, know their real motive for doing some stuffs and all of that. So these forensic psychologists could work in a prison, they could work in maybe in the FBI, in an intelligence team, they could even work with the DSS and all of that, because they do the questioning. So beyond this normal interrogation where you find out that a criminal continues denying when evidence is clear, these forensic psychologists have so studied human behavior that even through your body movement they know you're lying, right? Every other thing about you might be so sure, you might be looking them in the eye, but maybe you just tossed your tie, maybe you just did I just know that a little sign someone just shows is enough to tell a forensic psychologist that oh, this person is lying. And so this is why they need them there to interrogate these hardened criminals and get really what information they want to get from them. And so another very wonderful area of psychology is the high intensity therapist. Just as the name implies, high intensity therapists work in medical centers, in hospitals, and some of them own their personal offices, right? Some of them work even online. They offer therapy basically, and especially among people passing through one mental disorder or another, they go through these high intensity therapies, and these high intensity therapies go a long way in digging deep to the root of a problem. And so someone going through depression would have to pass under such person. That's why one thing you need to know about psychology is that for you to be a good student in psychology, or for you to be a good psychologist in practice, you must be an ardent listener. Yes, you cannot be more of a talker and do so much in psychology, because you would need to listen, you would need to observe, you would need to study, and you would need to respect perspectives. Yeah, so psychologists respect a lot of perspective, and that's what they do in this high intensity therapy. They offer you treatments, they offer solutions, they just bring the way out from situations that you find really tough, right? I give you an example. And so I had a friend, and this friend of mine had issues, and we just felt like, okay, we could talk it out and all of that. After much encouragement, after much discussions and all of that, he was still the same way he was, but just an hour session, an hour paid session, right, with a psychologist went a long way to solve his problem. And so psychologists can be sometimes underrated, they can be sometimes underestimated, but trust me, they do a very good job in this. They you begin to feel like you have an OCD based on the general knowledge you have about an OCD, but meanwhile what you have at that moment is another disorder of its own. It could just be a mid-time crisis, a mid-20 crisis and all of that. And trust me, they are always there to offer solutions in cases as this. Another very wonderful opportunity for a psychologist are the occupational psychologists. So what do? They basically research into different careers, different opportunities, and they help people to make career choice. Right? You see what I'm doing at the moment, broadcasting about career opportunities. A psychologist could do this. An occupational psychologist would basically advise you after asking a lot of questions about your flaws, your strengths, your weaknesses, and your perspective about life. Can easily say, okay, you will do well in this occupation, okay, you will do well, I believe you should be here, I believe you can. That's basically what they do. So they give occupational recommendations to as many people as need their help. And yes, they can be found in schools, they can be found in offices and many other areas. Another very wonderful opportunity in psychology is the psychological well-being practitioner. One thing I've realized in my research of career paths in psychology is that their career paths are kind of intertwined. Yes, so you could see the same function but in different areas of life. And so psychological well-being practitioner has to do with the health. Yeah, there's a way, from my research, right, there's a way you could worry, there's a way you could be so filled with anxiety that it even affects your health. And then you can find someone having a deteriorating health condition, not necessarily because they are not living healthy, but because they are passing through some psychological trauma, right? But because they are passing through some, let me say, maybe depression and all of that, which could be handled. And this is where psychological well-being practitioners come in. They help to prefer solutions. They help to prefer to prefer panacea, just in general, an antidote, a solution to those problems. And so you realize that you've just been diagnosed with a health condition, but after a very good therapy with such kind of psychologist, you go back to the hospital and you see that your heart is now in a proper rate. Yes, so a lot of health issues we find ourselves in these days are linked to our mental health, and that is where the psychological well-being practitioner comes in. If you're following us, if you're still listening, kindly Tell us your name, university you school in, or if you're an undergraduate, let us know. If you're a graduate, let us know. If you offer psychology as well, let us know in the comment section. If you've not shared our post, also do that. All right, we are still on career path in psychology. A very wonderful career path is also the social worker. Now here's it. There's a course called social works, right? On its own, a department of its own, but a psychologist go way into social works as well. And so social works do outpatient therapy, inpatient therapy. They even go to schools, they go to prisons and all of that, and they ensure that people who need counseling, people who need advice, people who need a guide, people who just need help in various areas are attended to. Some social workers in psychology do this as a pro bono, like if they do it for free, some do it voluntarily, some work with NGOs, some work with organizations to see that there's a subsidized rate, especially for people who cannot afford it. Yeah, so another very wonderful opportunity in psychologists are the experimental psychologists. So what do? They work in research labs to conduct amazing experiments. They come up with theories, they come up with topics related to human behavior. Yes, so something you need to understand about these people is that they are deep researchers. They do a lot of experiments, and if you realize, in most courses in the world, right, you find out that in one way or the other a psychological theory comes in. Just in one way or the other, there's need for that. And so this is what these experimental psychologists do. They go deep to study a lot of things, uncover a lot of theories and topics that are related to human behavior. And so an experimental psychologist can be needed in an organization where things seems to be going down over the years. So they realize that it looks like, okay, we have maybe non-partisan, there's something called the theory X and Y, which has to do basically with people. There's a category of those who would love gratifications, who would love reward to work and give a very reasonable output. And then there's another category who believe that they should be committed with or without carrots. And by carrots, I mean reward, right? So these experimental psychologists go deep to study all of this and come up with better theories to make such organizations work at its peak. Another very wonderful opportunity of a psychologist is the marketing manager. It's really interesting that marketing managers could also study a course in marketing, could study a course in mass communication, and as well study psychology. Yes, so marketing managers conduct campaigns, and the beauty of a psychologist being a marketing manager is they know more of this emotional appeal. They know how best to meet the needs of their audience. They know how best to persuade, right? They know how best to influence, because over the years they've studied humans. And so you want to run an advertisement, and you've gotten a script writer, you've gotten maybe an advert manager. You might need a marketing manager who studied psychology to look into your ideas from various perspectives, right? Judging from your target audience, they could easily say, okay, this will not appeal to those in the rural area. They could easily say this cannot appeal to those in urban areas and all of that. So that's the beauty of a marketing manager. So they conduct these campaigns after so much research. In fact, one very beautiful thing about these people is that they could go into the marketplace conducting researches without you knowing, because they've so understood human beings and they've known how best to take out ideas and information from them without them even knowing that, okay, this is a research actually going on. So that's what they do. Yes, another very important career path in psychology are the suicide hotline. It's just usually called suicide hotline. And so these people are placed in countries who really value their citizens, and I believe every country should. and they're also placed in some NGOs and all of that. And the role of these people is that they take in calls. They're just like the 911, the people you could call, not necessarily 911, but I'm just giving an example, right? And so you could call them for matters, for matters that are very pressing. You could call them, say, oh, I'm about to take my life, I just lost my job, this is happening, I just realized my husband has been a cheat over the years. A man coming to say, I just realized all the kids are not mine, and all of that. They contact this hotline. And one very interesting thing about the suicide hotline is that they work 247. So they work in shifts, right? And so they are everly available to listen to and counsel anybody at the verge of suicide. It's a lot of work, because a lot of persuasion, a lot of discussion, and it's going to be a lot easier if possibly these person they are speaking with is physical, just like the clinical psychologist. But for this suicide hotline, people who handle it are not necessarily with the victim at the time. And so it will require a lot of mastery with words, it will require a lot of understanding, it will require a lot of empathy, it will require a lot of positivity, a lot of mastery in word usage to make someone who is about to go over the cliff to reconsider, right? So they do a really tough job there. They do a really tough job. And sometimes when they see that there's need for a rescue mission, they could easily, while contacting or while speaking with such persons, reach out to anybody around the vicinity where this said supposed victim is for help. Do you understand? So that's what they basically do. They help reduce the cases of suicide in the country. And so you look into the statistics and all of that, you realize that we have a very high rate of suicide in the world. Yeah, even in the European countries, in the Western states, there's a very high rate of suicide, and this simply means that a lot of suicide hotlines needed. Personally, I don't know much about how many suicide hotlines we have in Nigeria, but I know that there will need for as many people who could specialize in calming these suicide victims in the system today, especially in a system where the cost of living, standard of living, and all of that are not really smiling to the economy and to the populace, to the citizens, and all of that. Okay, over to this child psychologist. I want to make us understand that psychology has different areas, right? And so people could specialize in the youth, with the youth, some could specialize with children. Okay, over the years, I realized that children are somewhat sidelined when it comes to mental health, right? So people can feel like he's a child, she's a child, she's just acting up, maybe it's just the normal children thing, and you see this child getting so withdrawn over the years. So the role of child psychologists is that they study children. Those things you cannot understand from a child, they easily would pick it up and say, no, this child is sick, this child is this. That's what they basically do. Another very wonderful thing about these people is that they help even parents in parenting. So they could tell you how best to raise your child, as your child is formed by all that they see around their environment as the day goes by, right? And so child psychologists can communicate deeply and go into the heart of a child to even know when a child is being molested, to know when a child is being abused. They express a child's feeling easily by what they've studied so far. Children are the leaders of tomorrow, like we would always say. They are the foundation, they are the bedrock of whatever a society is going to become, because for every adult today, they were once kids. And we realize that many children these days go through a lot psychologically. Maybe because of the absence of proper parenting, maybe because of the harsh standards of living, because of the kind of life they were exposed to from maybe the onset. And this is where a child psychologist come into play. And so parents out there and siblings out there, you need to understand very clearly that children actually need psychologists. When it gets to a point where a child who's really always active gets withdrawn, it's a call for an alarm, right? But most of the times you would not be able to know what's wrong with them. Sometimes you just realize the child is always crying. A child who is not usually crying, is not sitting, begins to cry. This is where you see a child psychologist come fully in play. They could easily study the child's behavior, study their maybe their gesticulation and all of that, and say, okay, yes, this is what this child needs at the time, this is what this child is going through and all of that. And so this is the beauty of a child psychologist, and they help a long way in working on the subconscious of a child. One very beautiful thing about the subconscious mind is that we are likely to replicate maybe 80 to 90% of what is registered in our subconscious mind. And so a child who grows up seeing the parents in consistent conflict would likely do the same if they've not been properly, talked out of that. If there's no intentional step to take them out of that, oh yes, they would hate it. In fact, they would not like maybe the scenario and all of that, but because it has been registered in their subconscious, there is every likelihood that they will replicate the same. All right, we still have a long list here. We have the sport and exercise psychologist. Okay, I was really wowed when I saw this. I never knew we had athletes and all of that who need, like, for sports reason, work with psychologists. For many countries who really invest a lot in their athletes, they work hand in hand with these sports and exercise psychologists. So what do? They help manage stress and sustain a lot of energies for as many people who are sportsmen and all of that. And so they, there's a lot of emotional, will I say, a lot of emotional expressions that come with sports, right? So we realize that sometimes we even see that these people involved in sports go through depression, from one depression to another, probably because they had a fracture, they had a major injury and all of that, and this makes them sometimes lose confidence in their career. So this is where these sports psychologists come. They help control their concentration and help give them a very strong attention to what they are pursuing. And so if an athlete, for example, is not in a proper state of mind, they might not do or have the best outputs in maybe a competition and all of that. And so they invite these sports psychologists to help them to make them speak out, to make them say a lot of things, a lot of fears they have about their career and all of that. And from that they can profess solutions to bring these people back to a place where, in good health, in good reasoning, they could perform excellently well in whatever sporting activity they venture in. And yes, they exist. I don't know how well they act or serve in Nigeria, but I know that in various countries they really exist. And so another very wonderful opportunity I'm going to be talking about now before we go on a short break is the human resource officer. Yes, just like in mass communication, in psychology as well, a psychologist can serve as a human resource manager, because the role of a human resource manager is basically to understand human well-being, right? To know about why the staff are beginning to act in a certain way, why is there no job loyalty amongst us and all of that. And so these human resource managers also help in the overhauling of staff. They help in hiring and firing of staffs, right? And so when these people who have studied human behavior are in an interview session, you can imagine that they would know when someone is literally lying, when someone is literally just pretending to adjust to whatever situation the company places, right? And another very wonderful thing is through continuous study of their staff in an organization, they could easily know when there is need for an increase in salaries, when there's need for an adjustment in remuneration and all of that. And so this is what these people do in the office of the HR. We're going to be going on a very short break, and when we are back, I will take you through other wonderful career paths in psychology. If you're still with us, kindly let me know on the comment section, hit the like buttons, and once again, share. Thank you.
My School News TV, giving you a voice. 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 My School News TV, giving you a voice.
Welcome back to Career Compass in My School News TV. So, if you're just joining us, kindly let us know your name. If you're a student in the university, let us know where you're streaming live from, what university, what course you're studying, and yeah, as many things you want to let My School News know. So, please, just for the sake of those who are just joining, we're talking about career path in psychology. Yeah, so in Career Compass, we seek to delve deep, to take people deep into the real opportunities and the vast marketplace opportunities for various careers, right? And so beyond the stereotyped careers, like I said, the stereotyped maybe offices or positions in different departments in the universities, there are many other opportunities hidden under them, which are even really lucrative and can go a long way in promoting your career in whatever course you're studying. And still on psychology, another very wonderful career path is the life coach. Yes, I know quite alright that we have many life coaches now, right? Even people who did not study psychology, you could just see someone out there who's an accountant, and why we're in a system where it looks like there's a trend right now. Everybody wants to be a content creator. The other person wants to be maybe a copywriter, and the other person maybe wants to be a life coach. And it looks like even people who are not fit, who have not even helped themselves, you see them running probably a course online. I'll tell people I'm a life coach, pay me this, and they know little or nothing about these life coaching, right? The beautiful thing about being a career, taking psychology as a career path for a life coach, is that you would have a specialized knowledge. Yes, you would not just have the general knowledge everybody has, maybe through books, through studies you have seen as a student, especially when you've advanced in your studies. You will be able to do a very perfect job as a life coach. Psychologists could also serve as mediators in time of maybe conflict, in time of wars, in time of as many kind of conflict as you know. A psychologist can come in as a solutions provider. Do you understand? And so they listen to both parts, helps bring they help bring out, okay, this is the underlying factor here, this is the issue, this is your own contribution to this issue, and this is the other party's contribution to an issue. So this is what a mediator does. So they just help to bring about peace. Yes, so they could work with PR organizations as well. They could work hand in hand with these PR to see that a lot of wisdom, a lot of strategies are put in place based on human behavior to further peace, to promote peace. And so these mediators also work in schools, they work in organizations, and as many places. They just settle disputes, okay? And so maybe a school, for example, is having a dispute with their host community. A mediator, in line with, they can't do this alone, in conjunction with a public relations officer, could go to see how they could talk and maybe liaise these people, or come to a very reasonable agreement with whoever is having an issue, to see that everything ends in peace. So this is what mediators do. Sometimes before countries go for war, mediators also do a good role in trying to talk, bring up maybe treaties and as many things, agreements, right, to see that they could prevent this war. So when these people have failed in this area, it sometimes leads to an outbreak of war and all of that. So this is what the mediator psychologist does. Another very wonderful adventure, I call it an adventure because I feel it's beyond a theoretical thing. Are the researchers in psychology, right? They are kind of related to the experimental psychologist. But one thing about the experimental psychologist is that they could be lab assistants, right? They work in labs. But for a normal researcher of things that pertain to psychologists, they don't necessarily work in a lab. Just through their studies, through survey, through content analysis, through focus group research, even through ethnography, right? They could go and delve deep into various matters of concern. And so if a country, for example, is having a very increased rate maybe in suicide, they could bring up many psychologist researchers to go deep and know maybe exactly what the problem is. Or a company is realizing that a lot of their staff maybe are just signing out, are retiring, are laying off the job and all of that. These companies might need the help of these researchers who are going to go deep to understand human behavior and make very wise decisions for such organizations. Another important career path in psychology is the substance abuse counselor. All right, the role of the substance abuse counselor can really not be overemphasized, especially in the system we find ourselves, right? We're in a system where we have a very, it's unfortunate though, but we have a very substantial percentage of youth, of even the elderly people, who are into one addiction or the other, who are into maybe drug addiction, maybe smoking and all of that, and see this maybe as a means of escape, right, from maybe the harshness of this life, right? Some people say life no balance, and so we see a lot of people taking in various substances to help boost maybe their morale, to help escape from all of this just for a while, right? And so these people who specialize in substance abuse, they help us to control and conquer addictions. Yeah, and so someone who is passing through addiction over the years and maybe have fought, right? They've tried personally to fight this, but they see this addiction coming up times without number, and then they don't really know, how do I get out of this? Which part of my brain is affected by this? And all of the psychological or scientific things that happen inside the body before it manifests as an addiction, right? So since they cannot proper solutions to these addictions, they work closely with substance abuse counselors. And yes, research shows that to a good level, they go a long way in stopping drug addictions and substance addictions in the world today. And so these people sit with hardened addicts and talk to them about, to know exactly the reason why this is, they maybe abuse such drugs, to know the way out, to know how best they could control it, to know, okay, maybe recommend some, in cases where these people take it because of depression, they could even recommend some antidepressant drugs. Do you understand? And so this is what these substance abuse counselors do. So some NGOs, especially NGOs that work in maybe whose major career or whose major pursuit is to stop drug abuse, would definitely need a substance abuse psychologist in their, maybe, or counselors in their environment, because they go a long way in really talking to them. One thing I want you to know is that words are really powerful. Yeah, but if you've not mastered maybe how to use these words, you might end up in an aggression theory, where whoever abuses this substance can in turn start fighting you, start raising arms and all of that on you, just for questioning what they do. And so these psychologists with a lot of intelligence know how best to approach such matters when they arise. Yeah, so we also have the college admissions counselor. They are just like the educational and occupational counselor, so they help in choosing career paths, they help in planning academic pathways and all of that. And a very interesting part of these career opportunities for psychologists is the marriage psychologist. Okay, marriage is something almost everybody, I wouldn't say everybody because not everybody is interested, but almost everybody is affected by. And right from all I have seen online, from all I've heard, real life evidence and all of that, marriage is something that you would still have a lot to learn, right, when you even go into it. No matter the number of books you read and all of that, some experiences will still be novel to you, right, once you go into marriage. And so these people help reduce the case of divorce. I think earlier this year, statistics had it that over 5,000 couples were already divorced in the month of January. It was a report from some counselors and all of that. And this is what these psychologists help to prevent, right? They help to strengthen couple relationships, identify struggles. One major cause of separation and divorce is because of the lack of this identification. These psychologists will help to identify, okay, this is the major challenge, this is the struggle. When you've just been thinking that this person is just acting up, when you've just been thinking that maybe this person just has a mood swing, these people are so specialized to know that, okay, this is not actually a mood swing. Your wife is actually passing through this series of crises and would need maybe some time with the therapist. You know, there's some cases where people go through maybe postpartum depression and all of that. Postpartum depression is depression that happens to a woman or even men, yes, after childbirth, right? And so this sometimes causes a lot of separations and filing for divorce among couple. But you know, meeting a marriage psychologist can really help to ease this, because they clearly make you understand that, okay, this is a phase she's going through. He or she is not actually a witch. He or she is not actually what he's manifesting at that moment, right? You know, that's why you realize that some women, after they give birth, their behavior, their attitude, even in pregnancy, seems to just change all of a sudden. And so these will require a lot of understanding and knowledge for you to know that, okay, these people are not just being wicked, they are simply undergoing a phase in human life, in human behavior and all of that. And that very wonderful thing they do is that they facilitate open discussion among couple, right? We realize that a lot of couple rarely have time to really talk about deep matters, right? It's just basically on the surface, and there's a lot of tolerance going on, and so many things are swept under the carpet until the cup is full. And you know what happens when the cup is full? When the cup is full, divorce, separations, and crises come up in the home. And so what these people do is they facilitate such open conversations to ensure that hidden matters which have been swept under the carpet over the years, over the time of their marriage and all of that, are brought to limelight and are solved with immediate effect. The next on our list is the military psychologist. One very interesting thing about the military is that in the military, there's a presence of almost all careers in the world. Yes, it's the barrack. A barrack, right? A barrack is like a country of its own. It's like a world of its own. It's really vast. And so there in a military camp or in a barracks, you could see a doctor who is also a militant, right? But you could see some other doctors who are not necessarily militant, but over the years have gotten used, maybe have gotten used to how everything runs there. And then you could see even lawyers, barristers there. You could see pastors there. You could see a psychologist like I have just mentioned there. And so what do? They help a lot of military personnel with the issues such as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. The truth is this: a lot of militants, a lot of people in the military have seen so much that their mental health cannot contain. And so just imagine coming from a war where you barely survived, coming from series of torture, maybe in a place where you were held hostage. These people come out really traumatized at times, and this is where these military psychologists come into play. They help through process to bring you back to the state you were before such incident occurred. Some of the other roles they play is in cases where possibly a militant or whoever was involved in a major bomb blast and happened to survive. And there's this reoccurrence, this trauma that comes with you remembering it. And sometimes it's unfortunate that some of these people maybe suffer loss of memory over some time, right? And so these military psychologists go a long way in trying to help you recollect your memory, trying to take you back to this incident, trying to make you heal and deal with as many issues that must be maybe the reason why you're passing through such PTSD. Yes, and so some of them, like I said, even deployed into the armed forces, and so they could even go maybe follow the medics to war and all of that to prefer maybe to offer these their services to as many that would need them. And so yes, just like you can be a barrister and become a reverend father, you can be an army but a psychologist, right? And so there's a lot to venture in the military, in the armed forces of Nigeria and in many other countries. It's a very, like I said, it's a country of its own, and it's a very beautiful and well paid job. All right, next on our list, as we are rounding up, is the speech language pathologist. What do? They help people with speech patterns, and so they help eliminate stammering, language delay, reading comprehension, and other maybe speech disorders. And so stammering can actually be helped. Yes, stammering can be managed, stammering can be cured over the years with such speech language pathologists. And especially for children who undergo talking difficulties, you realize that they barely can clearly pronounce a word. These psychologists go patiently with such people until they come to a point where they can now speak just like others do. And so they do a lot of work. That's why you see people who venture in this require a lot of patience, and of course they are well paid because they help a lot in speech. And for you to specialize in this area of psychology, you must have at least a master's degree in psychology. Yes, with a bachelor's degree you cannot really function. I doubt you would get an opportunity in speech language pathology. Lastly on our list today is the biological psychology. Yes, these people help to understand the nervous system, the brain, how everything goes, how every delicate part function, and how all of these come together to make us who we are You know, there's a book, Why You Act the Way You Do. You see, these biological psychologists could influence such books, because over time they've studied this human behavior, they've studied everything about the body system and how it arrives at how you are today, how it arrives at your temperament, how it affects your reactions to life and your disposition to as many perspectives you're going to see in the world today. So this is the work of these people. So yes, practicing psychology, like I said in the beginning, is very flexible, and I'm really sure that with these career opportunities that you have been presented with today, you can clearly see, okay, which of these, you can ask yourself, right, which of this area will I do best in? Am I a good listener? Is this my career path, or do I love to talk? If you're a talkative, or you're garrulous, or you just love to talk, you might function as a counselor if, in line with your proper communication skill, you are a very good listener. But being a very good listener, being someone who pays attention to details, being very good in observation, right, being a very good observer, will go a long way in psychology. If you are interested in psychology, kindly let us know in the comment section. And yes, until we meet again, I'm going to be opening the floor for as many who are listening, who are viewing. We're going to still work with the highest votes. And so just drop in the comment section what department, what course, what career path you would want us to talk about in our next meeting. See you same time, same station, My School News TV, and on Mondays next week. See you. Thank you.